Mike Perlak here to entertain you with the help of Alan Parsons Project.
Who knows where the road may lead us?
Only a fool would say. 1987 album. That song is called La Sagrada Familia. An album called Gandhi. Gandhi spelled Gaudi. Just finished watching part one of the 1982 movie Gandhi, spelled Gandhi. Decided to do a little film reflection video. I'm not going to rush, but I am going to attempt to make this as short as possible. I thought seriously about watching the whole 4 hours. Actually, it's more longer than 4 hours, but I decided it's best I do this the way I did Gone with the Wind in 2 parts. Well, the intro of the movie, they basically show 1948, how Gandhi was killed in 1948. Same year, I thought, ironically, that we had helped create Israel in the Middle East. I thought that was curious. But then the story goes to 1893, where it's Gandhi in a train in South Africa. I thought he was an Englishman without the maybe it was because minus the mustache, but yeah, I thought it was weird that the guy in the train was calling him colored. Like we don't allow colored lawyers on the train, I guess, apparently. I was mesmerized by that because to me he looked white. He looked Caucasian. Maybe because he didn't have the mustache yet. Ben Kingsley played Gandhi in the movie. So the intro of the movie pretty much emphasized the indie people's putting up with all this belittlement from the policies and powers that be from England, despite their positions and statures. Because it's like the Gandhi character was a lawyer, and they're calling him colored. But he says a minority of one is important if the one has truth on their side. Majority rule does not necessarily have truth. It is not necessarily entitled to truth without question. I believe that goes to the heart of the problem with the left now. Well, they won't have my obedience. A line from the movie. I thought it was curious. They were singing a tune, God Save Our Noble King, but they were singing it in the tune of My Country 'Tis of Thee. I thought that was kind of curious. Promoting the whole non-violent thing. At one point, their English military is charging towards them on horseback, and they one of the guys gets the bright idea to, let's just lay down, the horses won't trample on us. And I thought to myself, boy, the horses have more brains than the humans. I remember a quote from Gandhi, which I didn't hear in the movie yet. I only watched the first part so far, but I actually heard this from a Presbyterian pastor. Saying that, a quote from Gandhi where he says, I love your Christ, it's Christians I have a problem with. When I was a kid, I just remember just thinking, oh yeah, he's just some skinny and I guess wise old guy. I didn't really think much of it. But after having seen this movie, he seems to me just like just a man, just like any other man. And then at some point in the movie, in the aftermath of the whole thing with the horses, he asks the English, or no, he's still in South Africa at this point. He asks the South African leader for a shingling, for a taxi, so he can make his way back to India. So at that point, the story jumps up to 1915, Bombay, India. There's Delhi, I guess is where he's from. And then the story had some charm when they were on the train, some of the guys were encouraging some of the other guys to get up on top of the train where there was more room and you could be closer to God, I guess. and, uh, and then when they were going to a tunnel, they just bend down and pray. So, had a little bit of charm in the movie there. But then things get a little serious when Gandhi explains that between Delhi to Bombay there are 700,000 villages in India, and a few delegates in England cannot represent, in mere name of freedom alone, the Indian people who work and slave in the desert non-stop. So by design, that which was a working solution in Western society, that in turn was made to work now in England, did not necessarily work for India. The English tax, between the tax and rent that the England imposed on the land and on the Indie people, they had no or bad crop, couldn't sell the crop, the England said, too bad, you starve, and we just tighten our control of the land. Tell your people to blame Gandhi. And they put him in prison. Yeah, it's Gandhi's fault for letting the Indian people feel that they have the privilege and dignity for food and water. Apparently. What do I always say on this channel? Remember, the blame game is the lifeblood of modern feminism, victimhood mentality, all for the purpose of feeding all the leftist agenda. Promise I'll keep that to a minimum. So then the movie goes on, a little more charm in the story. The governor is mildly annoyed that Gandhi is traveling to see him by third class. Yeah, obviously he's still promoting the whole non-violence thing. A quote from the movie, Gandhi says, I want to change their minds, not kill them for flaws we all have. I would say that is a modern Christian ideal. Gandhi and company start a kind of boycott to hit England in the pocketbook, and it must have worked because at some point they have to get the military to step in so England does not lose their connection with the outside world. There is one quote from Gandhi, which wasn't in the movie yet. Like I said, this is just part one that I saw. But I do recall learning somewhere along the line in life that one of the things he says is, which I kind of had a little, as a survivor of child abuse, I didn't really agree with this statement till I seen this movie and understood it in full context. But when he says, through our suffrage, we will show them the error of their ways. Or something, I might have ad-libbed or changed it around a little bit. I was doing my memory with that. But anyways, that quote from Gandhi, when as a child, I was like, what is that going to do? Because, my father kicked and punched me, and all I did was ball up in a corner for 6 years, and that went on for 6 years. Unless it took the authorities' intervention for him to see the errors of his ways. But anyways, now that I've seen the movie and I see it in full context, I see his point now. Then the British slaughter a bunch of innocent people. The British, mainly this one British general who calls shots and, because of the errors of the ideals that British government promotes, that this guy saw that he was doing right by slaughtering all these innocent people, men, women, and children. To which, after the dust clears, they basically say sorry, but they still want to keep their power, so they butter up the indie people with gifts and luxuries. One guy in the story feels a bit ashamed because he rode second class, and the guys assure him, "Oh, you're entitled to a few luxuries." Yeah, kind of like welfare. And you wonder why the left in the modern world is all for welfare. But I'd be very, very concerned if you're an American citizen, because this is going to be in reverse. They give you all the welfare, all the government assistance, all the welfare. Then comes the slaughter. Watch out. All I'm saying is watch out, people. The leftist agenda. Of course, Gandhi is just one man at the end of the day, and inevitably there are those who would act in violence and end up killing a bunch of police. The part one basically ends with Gandhi promoting the fasting thing to his people and everything to further showcase further suffrage to get through the hearts and minds of the English, I guess. So at this point, I just give my reflection of Gandhi Part 1, 1982's Gandhi Part 1. This, and when I say this, I mean this on a grand scale. I'm not talking all about what I have or what you have or what somebody else might have. When I say this, I mean this on a grand scale. Truly is temporary. And you don't even need to get religious about it or even spiritual. Although I would say that I find hope, deliverance, and peace in spirituality. But for all I know, maybe it's not for everybody. After all, I was a self-proclaimed atheist for a time in my life. But makes me think of all the people that died throughout human history for noble causes, and I'll reference another movie, Lawnmower Man. Pierce Bronson Yeah. Anyways, he's in the movie. The movie Lawnmower Man, specifically based on a novel by Stephen King. Specifically, a deleted scene from that movie called A History Lesson. The only deleted scene in that movie, I think, should have stayed in the movie. I thought it gave the character, it gave the story, it gave the whole thing a little more intellectual depth. It's if you're not familiar with the film, it's basically a science fiction horror movie having to do with virtual reality, which at the time it came out was kind of a new thing. This specific scene had to do with the human mind and its capability of absorbing information and retaining information. And in the context of the fictional storytelling, this Dr. Angelo, played by the Pierce Bronson character, develops a way to open the human mind up to an infamous number of things. And at one point, his subject, this character Job, who at the beginning of the movie is borderline mentally retarded, is fast becoming a genius. And this deleted scene, I think, should have been left in the movie, called A History Lesson. He's going through and absorbing all this information via virtual reality, where he's basically sucking up all this information like a sponge in his human brain. And he goes through all these discs and he's absorbing all this information, and then he stops and pauses. And he says, oh God, I can't remember. I'll have to find out and put it down in the comments later, but I can't remember the actor who played Joe, but he did a fantastic job. His acting is definitely one of the highlights of the movie. But he takes a pause after absorbing all this information and says, "I didn't know it was so complicated, so disturbing." And the Dr. Angelo character, Pierce Bronswick's character, comes up. What's wrong, Job? What's wrong? What's wrong? What's upsetting? What's disturbing? What's disturbing? History, Dr. Angelo. It's like a window into why things are the way they are. So many good men and women. So many noble causes. So much tragedy. Pierce Brosnan's character's like, how many did you go through? Oh, all of them, all the way up to the American Revolution. Yeah. I think that deleted scene should have been left in the movie. So anyways, that's my reflection of part 1 of 1982's Gandhi. I guess I'll just end this one with a little more help from Alan Parsons Project. So until the next time, La Sagrada Familia.